This episode is brought to you by Muntins Malts, a company that is passionate about providing premium malts to brewers worldwide. For over a century, Muntins has been a leading supplier of brewing and distilling malts, offering the finest British malted barley on the market. You can experience the difference Muntins offers by joining a recipe receiving tier of our Trub Club, because every kit that ships out now includes premium Muntins malt. You know, we've known the Muntins crew for a long time, and I can tell you, friend, you're going to love brewing with their grains. Ask your local supply shop to carry Muntins malts, or homebrewers can join our Trub Club at homebrewhappyhour.com/club, be a part of the community, and come brew with us. Thank you, Muntins, for supporting our efforts and homebrewers worldwide. Today's show is brought to you by Hopsterette.com. Grown in the esteemed Yakima Valley on the Pewterball family farm, Hopsterette.com offers the widest variety of hops available online at incredibly competitive pricing. It's simple. They grow hops, they sell hops, and they ship hops straight from their family-owned farm to your doorstep. Producing the highest quality hops is Hopsterette.com's passion, and they're proud to be an independent grower in the craft beer industry. Go to Hopsterette.com right now and get what you need to make your brew day better. That's Hopsterette.com. Today's show is brought to you by Imperial Yeast. You hear us gushing over Imperial Yeast all the time, and that's because their yeast performs for us in every batch that we brew. Imperial Yeast is adored by commercial breweries and home brewers alike. Their pitch-right pouches are jam-packed with over 200 billion fresh yeast cells, guaranteed to deliver flawless, fast fermentations every time. Imperial Yeast strains are grown by a team of pro brewers and home brewers who live to help other brewers learn more and ferment better. Join any recipe receiving tier of our Trub Club and get a free upgrade to premium Imperial Yeast with every recipe kit that ships out to you. Learn more at homebrewhappyhour.com/club and come brew with us.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Selecting hops for a German Pils, understanding base malts for different styles, and balancing a Danby Kegerator system. This is Homebrew Happy Hour, episode 422. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. And if you, my friends, have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you could email joshua@homebrewhappyhour.com, like this episode happens to be very heavy and filled with, or even better, call it in to 325-305-6107. Leave a message after the beep. Get yourself a gift card to kegconnection.com. It does not get any better than that. I'm one of your hosts, Joshua Stubing, joined as always by the director of operations at cmbecker.com, Mr. James Carlson, fumbling over my words. Sorry. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. How are you, Josh?
Good. The weather is, I guess it's now spring. Officially, it feels like it. I mean,
is it really?
I don't think officially on calendar. It's just the weather. Like right now, it's 70. It's a beautiful day here in San Marcos. The wind is still a little high. Nothing like yesterday. We were in a group chat. There was a wildfire in my area because yesterday's conditions, very dry, high wind. That's not good. Like people still probably flicking their cigarettes out of their cars on the highway. I don't know actually how this wildfire started, but it was under control and all that. But the wind up there was really bad too, was it not?
Oh yeah. I was a volunteer fireman for 7 years, and it never ceases to amaze me the stupidity of some people out in high wind, like welding on fences. We had one guy, I think he ended up getting a ticket because he was burning brush and there was 30-mile-an-hour winds.
He was burning brush and are you serious?
That's serious, man. Can't make this stuff up. Common sense sometimes left the building.
When you talk to him, I didn't see anything wrong with that. I don't understand.
I thought I had it under control. I had a 5-gallon bucket of water.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I had my garden hose ready.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. We had a friend of mine was in at the border, and he does a lot of maintenance on Dairy Queen restaurants. And he sent me a picture, and it looked like something out of apocalyptic. I mean, there was there was a semi truck flipped over on the side on the interstate, and in the background it was like you couldn't see. It was just it was wild, man.
Oh no,
it's kind of a dusky, sandy. It was crazy.
My oldest, like her biggest fear, and I always say it's an irrational fear, but it's rational. But her biggest fear is our house burning down, and I get it too, right? Like because it happens even without those conditions. Like our house is pretty modern and it was built really well. So it was built in 2001 and it was a custom home. I'm not terribly afraid, but I get it. But yesterday, the school she goes to is in the town that the wildfire was in. So cell phones in that area were getting notifications about possible evacuations and this and that. And when she got home, she's terrified, thinking the wildfire's coming to our home and it's going to burn it down. I had to talk her off a cliff. Like, honey, I mean, let's hope it doesn't. But if it does get to our house, a lot of destruction has happened because of where it's located, and it would be a terrible thing. Let's hope it's not. And thankfully, like I said, the firefighters got it under control pretty quick. So I was grateful for that. Yeah. Some of y'all watching at youtube.com, or if you're listening, like 99% of you do, wondering, I haven't heard Todd's voice yet. Well, it's because I'm out of town. Well, Todd's in Phoenix right now. He, with a very successful trip, it seems like what he called us. He went out to visit some installers, spreading the good word of CM Becker faucets and other dispensing solutions. So hopefully that means more business for us when he gets back, but he could not join us for this week. I will get through the small talk fairly quickly and we'll get the episode going and wrapped up fairly quickly. But I do have an announcement, my friends. Did I make a screen for it? Oh God, I hope I did. Yes, I did. There it is on the screen. If you go to patreon.com/homebrew happy hour and you're in the recipe receiving tier, one of which where you're going to get the recipe for this month, because we do have every other month tiers. Either way, patreon.com/homebrew happy hour. The recipe, I'm so excited. It is a California Common. We have not done that kit in a hot minute, and it is a delicious one. And I actually used the original artwork because it was one of my favorites I ever did. This is actually your recipe, James. I don't know if you remember doing it.
That was one of my very first ones.
It was one of your very first ones that you did for Keg Connection. I mean, you had gotten hired by Todd for CM Becker. Like within a year, he was like, hey, we want to do this true to style line and I want you to do it. And you never say no. And so you were like, absolutely, I'd love to. Yeah. And, but it was one of our better selling ones. I can say that of our true to style lines, that one and the alt beer were the two best sellers based off the data. I always tried to push the Kolsch, but people, I guess, wanted to broaden their horizons, but they would get the California Common. It had a ton of great feedback. And I don't know if you remember the first run we did, we had metal placards for collective.
Oh yeah.
And my pop has them at his house. This one, how it printed on that. It's bigger than 8.5 by 11, but it's that same proportion. This is my favorite, how it came out. Cause they were kind of, bezeled and they are embossed, or what is it called when they pop out? Embossed. That's what that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Embossed.
They were embossed and 10. I don't remember. I don't think our friends it might have been Tin Tackers who did those for us. I don't remember. It was Tin Tackers. Okay. Tin Tackers for sure did the Homebrew Happy Hour thing. And they also did the Browtad sign. I couldn't remember. It was Tin Tackers. Great website. They do not sponsor us, but you might be able to use our promo code from 4 years ago on their website. It was like HHH or Homebrew or something, but go to Tin Tackers anyways, guys. But before you do that, go to patreon.com/homebrew happy hour and join the recipe receiving tier. You're going to love this kit. Thank you to our show sponsors, Muntons Malts, Hopsdirect.com, and of course, Imperial Yeast for providing the premium ingredients that truly do make these kits special. Which, speaking of our sponsors and how they support everything we do, Registration for Kolsch Cup 2025 is live over at kolschcup.com, which just redirects you. You could go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on Kolsch Cup 2025 up in the menu. You'll see all the registration details. As of right now recording, and the first week of March, we're at 15 people, and 14 of them have already paid. So 14 actual registrants for it for sure. So we're only taking 40. Y'all make sure to go and sign up at kolschcup.com and reserve your spot. See if you can take home, be crowned the grand champion of 2025. I do believe we are going to have our friend Jonathan Marut come be a guest judge. He has to wait for his schedule as a pilot, which I guess takes precedence over beer drinking. I don't get that. I got to talk to him, but we are doing it right now tentatively. And I say that just because Todd could always change his mind. It's May 30th is the date for Kolsch Cup. I put it on the calendar. You should see it there. It's on our shared calendar. But May 30th, my friends, will be the actual judging of Kolsch Cup 2025. Very excited. Once we get through mid-April, I'm going to order the shirts. I just got a coupon. I've been using a website called Crown Awards. They also don't sponsor the show, but if anyone has a different place for trophies, let me know before I order the monstrosity that I always order every year. Ask the Kolsch Cup and multiple call winners. I spare no expense. All the money from these events go right back into the event. So it's always fun. You can see all the rules and everything at kolschcup.com. Download a sample score sheet, what we use. We kind of tweak the score sheet to our liking, but it's basically the BJCP score sheet and all that stuff. I don't have a Brew Day live announced yet for my Pop and I doing the California Common, but I wanted to start the show asking you or getting your feedback on our last Brew Day live, James. My dad and I did the London Porter. And I'm borrowing, and I had to write an email to Todd to let him know he's not giving me that 10-gallon keg. I'm only borrowing it. I borrowed it because I thought, hey, how cool would that be if we started fermenting in that? I know we're going to sacrifice some volume, but it's stainless steel. We could do a closed transfer. Seems hygienic. Our first Firmzilla kind of is getting funky on us. The last couple batches have had more funk than we'd prefer. So I was looking for a solution. We gave it I thought it was enough headspace. I come into my office the day after we pitched, the morning after. I get here at like 7:45 after dropping my kids off, walk in my office, there's beer everywhere. It clogged up, it shot through my spunding valve and onto my wall, onto my guitar, a couple of my guitars. It got everywhere. The spunding valve's obviously ruined. Trong, I'm about to hit you up. See, how do I take this thing apart, or is it just kaput? I don't know what I did. I thought putting it under pressure immediately might help suppress krausen. I thought we had enough headroom. If I do it too close ever again with that little a headspace, I guess I have to do a blow off tube. What could I have done?
The problem is once it hits that overpressure, and then once it starts to vent, and it's gonna come out as nothing but chocolate milk.
That's what it was.
What it like.
That's what it was, dude. It was disgusting. On Saturday, literally 5 hours to clean my office. I don't even want to pan the camera over there because it's still a mess. But it was disgusting, and I bet you we lost 2 gallons. So I mean, I got it under control, sort of, and I haven't tasted it yet. I'm terrified, but I didn't just give up on the batch yet.
It'll be fine. It's venting out. It's not. There's nothing coming in. So
that's correct.
I mean, I would be surprised if it wasn't. So the Firmzilla, that's plastic, isn't it?
Yeah, but my pop and I total on that first Firmzilla we had probably done 25 to 30 batches on it, and a lot of scrubbing. I'm thinking the line here. What I really think the culprit was, and my pop is the one who pointed it out. So kudos to you, Dad, for this is his premise, and then I hopped on board. I didn't figure this out. The original floating dip tube in it. It was when I was telling him like the Kolsch had a little funk to it, but the batch before we had to dump out the English mild, but that was the yeast. 100% that was the yeast. But also when the Kolsch had a little funk, I was like, what on earth? I cleaned and we sanitized like we always do. And when we pulled out the when he was cleaning it, he goes, son, this line on this, we should at least replace this. Maybe I didn't have any replacement line, but he was like, this stinks. It's bad. It's funky. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. It smelled bad even after soaking it in brew clean, rinsing it, sanitizing it a couple of times. It was still funky. And so maybe it's not the whole fermenter. We might be able to, replace. I did get the tubing. I ordered some off Amazon. I did get it in so I can make another line that's long enough, because we use a Firmzilla that's 15.9 gallons. So I couldn't just
I would tell you, you could soak the hose in some bleach and water. I have actually run twine through the center of a hose with just a little water pressure and with a little cotton swab on the end and scrub the line, but it might be easier just to get some more hose.
That's what I did. Yes. Yeah.
Replace it.
Absolutely. So that's what we're going to do. And we're probably not likely to use the keg again, mostly for the volume. You know what I mean? Like if we're going to have to go 8.5 into the keg for fermenting, then we might as well stop brewing on the G40, we'd rather get two full kegs per batch that we're brewing, as opposed to the novelty. So Todd, I'm either going to bring that keg back to you, or I'm going to have a 10-gallon keg of water on tap all the time, which sounds great to me. But I wanted to get your opinion on it. And people who are watching and you ferment in a keg, let me know what you do. Can you still pressure ferment and do it in a keg and not sacrifice volume? Should I have not added pressure at first? James and I have kind of both concluded our batches turn out best when we immediately add pressure after we post. And so that's what we did. The beer, like I said, unfortunately, a lot of the chocolate milk was all over my wall, and that wouldn't have bothered me as much, but it was all over some of my collectible guitars. And that really, my poor wife Saturday morning thought I was dying when she heard the noise coming from my office. Are you okay? No, I'm not okay. Oh my God. But anyways, that is all the small talk I have. We have a great show lined up. Like I said, we are loaded on emails. I'd love y'all's voicemails, but for this episode, we are loaded on emails. And before we get to those questions,
time for listener feedback.
We've got some listener feedback, and it's from our buddy Luke, who emailed us a while ago. You can guess when. It's a spoiler. It's in the first sentence or two. But Luke emailed us. He said, "Hey, Homebrew Happy Hour. Congratulations on 150 episodes. Back on episode 148, Gilbert stopped doing a protein skim for the sake of head retention. In my personal experience, it's not scientific. I will brew the same Pilsner. I will often brew the same Pilsner and sometimes skim, but often forget, and the head retention seems unaffected regardless. I don't know if that's encouraging or discouraging to Gilbert, but I think the skim is certainly a relax, don't worry, have a homebrew part of the brew day. So don't stress too much if you forget to do it. Cheers to another 150 episodes. Luke, we've already done 300 episodes since you wrote that in. I apologize for is that 5 year delay? I don't know.
Well, that has to be at least 5.
It was a while ago. Luke, I hope you're doing well in life, and I hope you're still tuning in. You got a gift card to kegconnection.com. But the protein skim, I included it. I actually did a search in my database of emails, a search and find, because my dad and I on the live stream for the Brew Day Live, he always skims, because that's what you've taught us. And I'm like,
that's what I do. I know. You don't want chill haze, and sometimes if you don't skim those proteins, that hot break, then it can cause that. But
yeah, my dad literally.
That's what I do.
I know, and that's what he does. And I was giving him a hard time because he was skimming, and our G40, let's say for conversation's sake, it was at 209 getting up to boil, and he was skimming, and then went down to like 207, and then 205. I was like, "Pop, stop messing with the wort. We're trying to boil." He goes, "You have to skim the protein. You have to do it." And so when I found this thing, I was like, first off, I love how old the question or the feedback is, but I also love that my pop is just, he's an old dog, man. He was just like, "No, James told us to," scooping it up. I can tell you he does it every batch, so I can't relate to Luke and say what it's like when you don't do it, because my pop does it every single batch, every single time. And so I can say the batches turn out great. It's probably because of what my pop is doing. I'll give him that credit. But if I'm
trying to figure out what RDWHAHB.
Relax, don't worry, have a homebrew.
Oh, okay.
Yep, that's yeah, that was Charlie. We actually
no, I have a T-shirt that has that on it.
We actually have in our store. People forget because I don't push it because I'm a terrible salesman. We have a storefront. It's through Teespring or Creator Spring, whatever they're called now. If you're watching at YouTube, it's down below. They let you integrate it with your YouTube. And I made a shirt that has it written out. Relax, don't worry, have a homebrew. I'd like to make a Charlie Says Relax shirt. Like, who was that in the 80s? Frankie Says Relax, right? In that the relax, don't do. Yeah, I only remember that line from one of my favorite movies, The Wedding Singer, when Robert Smeagol's character says, "Hey, relax, don't do it." But anyways, thank you so much, Luke, for sending that. Reminder, friends, if you send us feedback in the future, we'd prefer it by voicemail to 325-305-6107. But either way, when we use your feedback or a question on a future episode, you do get yourself a gift card to catconnection.com, like our first question of the day. It's our buddy James, and he writes, "Hey guys, this is James W., new member of your Patreon. I have a question for a fellow James. What are your favorite hops to use for a good old-fashioned German Pilsner, and why? What hops should I avoid using? I'm in an experimental phase of my brewing journey. Also, I don't want to ruin a batch because I experimented too much. Thank you for the many years of information and entertainment." James, what do you got for James?
Well, I've been doing a lot of Pilsners lately, and here lately I've been using Saaz. And I like that because it has kind of a earthy. This is what I use. Okay, I got this years ago at a homebrew con, and it's a hop company, Hop Union, but it's got really cool stuff in it. Like, it tells you what it's for, whether it's a noble hop, and I always use noble hops that is non-GMO or modified, or their original land race hops from Germany and Europe. And I'll use Hallertau Mittelfrüh. I'll use of course Saaz, and then there's
Tradition.
I was going through this earlier because some of these I should already know.
No, you're. I'm off the top of my head. I know you've used Tradition before because I've gotten you that Spalt. But
Tradition. But Tradition's not a land race.
Oh, it's not.
Spalt is. It's a cross, and it was developed in 1993. Tenang is a good one that I use. But here lately, I've just been using the Saaz.
And I don't want to argue semantics. Saaz is that Czech or German?
It's Czech.
And is the hop?
But that's still considered a. Let me look it up. I'll tell you real quick.
Because then we're gonna have a whole debate of Germans and Czech in the YouTube comments about who invented the pills.
It's definitely a land race hop. It's a Czech land race. So people that don't know, that's right, borders Germany. So I still consider it. Well, it is considered a noble hop, even though it doesn't come out of Germany. But it's a good hop if you want to do any kind of light beer. A light lager. And then what I'll do is here lately, for the longest time, I do a single hop edition. And the reason why is I just wanted the bittering and I want it clean. But here lately, I've been doing up to 3 hop editions. So don't dry hop a whole lot. I don't want that mess. But I'll stage it. Just remember, guys and gals out there, if the longer you boil the hop, the more bittering agents get converted. And the shorter is, you get more the aroma and flavors. So that's the reason why, if back in the day, if I would just do a single hop edition of so many ounces, now what I do, I pull in my brewer's friend and then plug in the IBUs just for the bittering. Because it can be kind of confusing when you go in there and you put in all your hop additions. And if I've noticed this too, and I don't know if it's a program error or what, but if you do, let's say you do a 60 and then your second hop addition's aroma and it's 5. Well, you're obviously not going to convert those into bittering agents because they hadn't been boiled long enough. But it will affect, if everybody out there that has a brewer's friend, try this and comment. Of course, I could be wrong. But it seems like when I add all those different the aroma and flavor hop additions, it raises my IBU on the recipe itself, the calculator. So what I normally do if I'm building recipes and with the cool thing about a Pilsner is just base malt and some protein malt or carapils, and that's it. Real simple to do. Some of the easiest, nicest drinking beer out there to me. And so I will build that recipe for the IBUs, and I want to shoot between 25 and 30. And then once I get that for my bittering hops, so then I'll normally do a second at 30 and then a third at 15 or 10 or at flame out, just to give it a little character and a little aroma and a little flavor.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said you are doing a 60 every time.
Yeah. I always do a 60 just because that's the same as base malt. You want your foundation, and the foundation of a good beer is your base malt and your bitter. That's what makes it beer. That's what makes it smell like beer. That's the thing the cops smell, the hops, when you get pulled over.
When I'm driving.
So if you brew a beer without hops, it's not going to taste like a beer, but you won't have that hop smell coming out of your mouth. So
the cops comment made me laugh because the other day, so my wife never invites me to present for career day. I don't know why, but I made a fake presentation and I called it Functional Alcoholism and the Benefits of Nicotine in the Workplace, and gave her like this preview of it, and she was like, "You're never coming to my school." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" No. The funny thing is, like, my mom actually worries about how I post online, but because I don't drink that much. My pop and I drink on Sunday, and when I come up there, Todd hasn't been drinking much. Well, I'm lying. Todd is overcompensating now. When I came up on the last trip, he was shoving booze in my face. Like, hey, have this. Oh, hey, try this. Oh, have this. I was like, dude, I'm still drinking this one. Why are you taking so long? It was 4 minutes ago, pal. But
also, I didn't answer the complete question. He also asked, what hops should he not use? And I would just tell him this: anything that has high alpha acids, like you can use those, of course, but they're mainly designed for like IPAs and doubles and triples and, anything like that. But, for the most part, you're brewing the recipe. I would stay away from anything like a good one would be like if you're trying to do a Pilsner, you wouldn't want to use a Fuggle hop, because it's a really earthy hop. So it kind of gets away from, because if you think about a Pilsner, is kind of a light-bodied, semi-sweet, just a little bit. Mine tend to be on the drier side. So you wouldn't want an earthy hop that just wouldn't complement what you're trying to do with the beer. So what I do, and I'll pull this out, this is the BJCP guideline, and it's a good roadmap for what you're trying to do. It kind of points you in the right direction of what you want to do in grains. Doesn't really nail down the hops, but that's another thing that's cool about this, is with this book, it tells you what it's good for. Down there at the bottom, it also tells you if it's dual purpose. Can you use it for aroma? Can you use it for bittering? Is it just aroma? You wouldn't want a just aroma hop for bittering. I've tried that before thinking, nah, they're wrong. No, it doesn't work that good. So get online, look at I tell you what I did. I copied a lot of people at the beginning. It's almost like repeating what somebody says in another language. Once you kind of figure out the basics, then you can kind of experiment. I made lots of bad beers, and you get kind of used to the process and how it works and use every tool. The cool thing about, Josh says this every week, it's the best time in the world to be a homebrewer, is you got a wealth of information at your hands. When I first started brewing beer, I had a homebrew for dummies, and everything was in print form. Yeah. So now you can go in, you can go into Brewer's Friend and you can look at all the other recipes. They have them all rated. You can go into a specific style and see what people are doing in their recipes. Pull the BJCP guideline out and see what they recommend as far as how to construct that style of beer. And after a while, you won't think about it. You'll make your own recipes, and it's just you got to brew. That's
that is
line.
it.
And that's one thing, Josh, I've been real impressed with him. He's been brewing a lot this year. And,
we did, yeah.
It helps your game. Your brewing game gets better the more you brew.
And you just dial in on your equipment, you dial in on your processes, you dial in on everything. And then still, like, you know, like when we mix stuff up, we live and learn. If we're going to brew with the keg again, or ferment with the keg again, we're going to do things a lot differently and whatnot. But yeah, it's always learning. And I will say this, for other James, not you, James, but the guy writing the question, like my James said, looking up stuff online right now because you have access to the internet. If you're going for a German Pils, man, that makes it even easier because you can just look up German noble hops and then read what they're supposed to do. If you have a local supply shop, we encourage you to patronize. Give them your business. How about I say that? Yeah. We encourage you to shop local, and they should be a wealth of knowledge. Or if you buy your hops online, More Beer, wherever, they should have it on the hop listings there. And if they don't, go to hopsdirect.com, look up hops, and they will tell you alpha acid numbers per batch because it changes. It's not every. Yeah,
and that's a good thing to remember. Is the manufacturers of all the recipe ingredients, they have guidelines of what they suggest they're good for. I will tell you this, Hops Direct has a fantastic website.
Incredible. I agree. So incredible website.
I would encourage, don't go with what I say. Go on to hopsdirect.com, look at what they recommend, they have a hop guide online, and they're good people.
Really good.
I only have this because I've had it for 10 years.
Well, and I like analog, dude. No, you're pretty. I like analog in regards to resource stuff. Like I keep this pretty handy, the Kolsch book and the Alt Beer book, because I like analog. I mean, I obviously I'm 99% digital in my life, but there's something about a resource book being in print and having it for, you know, on your shelf. I just like the textile of a book. But yeah, it is the best time ever to be a home brewer, and hopsdirect.com does have a wonderful website. We don't have a promo code with them, but tell them we sent you if you do end up ordering from them direct on their website, because we like them to know. Enough of y'all have, because they've stuck around with us and they appreciate supporting us, but we also appreciate y'all supporting them, and we try to send as many people as we can. So James, who sent the question, James W., thank you so much for submitting that. A reminder, friends, when you submit a question to us anyway, email or text or whatever, you get yourself a gift card to kegconnection.com, but we sure would appreciate hearing your pretty voice. I'm down to like less than 15 voicemails, so call it in to 325-305-6107 and help a brother out, because Todd doesn't think real people exist in our audience. Moving on to question number 2, another email from a while ago. Our buddy Frank wrote, and he said, I'm currently refining my homebrew recipes, and I'm particularly interested in understanding how the choice of base malts can influence my flavor, color, or body of different beer styles. Could you guys delve into characteristics of various base malts, like maybe two-row, Maris Otter, and Pilsner? Additionally, how should one decide which base malt to use for creating a specific style, such as a stout, or an IPA, or a lager? Are there any tips or rules of thumb for pairing a base malt with the right style to enhance the desired characteristics of that beer? It's a great question from Frank. My first response before I throw it to you, and I'm so grateful for you being on the show with questions like this, is because I only do what you tell me to do, what your recipes say. You're like you did brew a Pils a while ago with Planet, which is a pale 2-row, and it turned out great. And I didn't ask you for an elaboration, but I go, oh, you didn't use the lager malt or Pilsner malt. You're like, no, because this one was set aside and I wanted to use grain, that wasn't accounted for and this or that, but you still produced a really good Pilsner. So how does that work? Like, I always thought the Pilsner malts for the Pilsner beer, but you brewed a great Pilsner with 2-row or with pale malt. Yeah.
Yeah. Normally what I do is I'll do like Planet Malt. This is just my comparison. Kenneth and the people at Munson's would probably disagree with me, but Planet Malt in my head is an ale malt. I think there's a little more protein content in the malt itself. So it lends a little not as dry beer as you could get from a Pilsner malt. And I think it's all in how they malt it. They floor malt this grain. And then you get into Maris Otter. Once again, I think it's what it boils down to is the protein content and how it renders out when you mash it. So if you're that's the reason why people use Maris Otter for stouts, is because the stout's a medium to thick bodied beer, sweet, hoppy, and that's the best grain for it. And then once again, a Planet Malt, if I was going to do just an amber ale, I would probably use that because once again, it has a different mouthfeel than a Pilsner malt. And those are generic terms just to give you an idea of what you want to use. Pilsner malt tends just to mash out a little drier, especially in the beta range. You can still adjust that with an all grain setup by mashing at different temperatures. And we've talked about this in previous episodes. So if you're in the 145 range, you're in beta. If you're in the 155 range, you're in alpha. Once again, beta is small sugar chains. Alpha is long sugar chains. So the yeast can't, in other words, alpha malt or malt that has been mashed in the alpha range, the yeast can't completely consume the whole sugar chain. So it's not completely fermentable. And for the most part, beta malts aren't either, but a lot more than an alpha malt. And then if you want to do some, there's I can't say the name because it's a really long, but if you wanted to do like a brute, you could add an enzyme and it will break it down in completely fermentable malts to where you could get down to 0 on your gravity.
Whoa.
So that makes, there was a trend, and you don't hear about them anymore, but if you remember a few years back, Josh, people were brewing brutes, and it was basically hoppy water with alcohol in it. And that's the reason why they were able to get away with that, is because every sugar that was created in the mashing process, when you added that amylase in, and you had to do it in like the 130 degree, 140 degree, don't quote me on it.
This is off the top of the head. Exactly. Yeah.
But what it did was, and you used just a small amount. What it did is it broke all those chains down into single sugars that the yeast can fully consume. So you were left with no body, no sweetness, nothing but CO2 and alcohol. And so there was a run of that, but I don't hear anything anymore on brutes.
I don't either on the homebrewing side of stuff. I mean, I don't hang out on the commercial side enough to know what they're doing. It still seems like Pilsners and IPAs are dominating everybody up to me. But so again, like I hate, this is my answer for Frank is almost like your answer for James, where I'm going to cop out and be like, brother, we're living in the best time ever, and we have the World Wide Web. So, you can go on there, and if you're like, I want to brew a stout, and you can, even better, if like, let's say you're a person who keeps grain and other like base malts and other grains and stock at your home, you could even type in, this one recipe called for brown malt, but I don't have any. Go to any given website or just Google's homepage to type in brown malt substitute, and then you're going to see a slew of options there too. And you could build a recipe off of just Google searches in regards to, hey, this is what I have. What kind of stout can I make? Or if you have Chat GPT or something. But the base malts, like you said, you're not going to want to use that Maris Otter for a Pilsner because the result is going to be a bodied mess that the style Pilsner does not call for in the guidelines. It wouldn't be a Pilsner at that point. It would be whatever, I mean, I don't even know what you call it.
Yeah. Well, here's what I would do, Frank. If you have the ability to do it, and I'm assuming you're doing 5-gallon batches, it wouldn't really work for us doing, because, we're doing 17, 18-gallon batches, but take a simple recipe. Just do 8 pounds of your base malt and do like a half a pound of carapils, or better yet, just take the carapils out. Just do 8 pounds of Pilsner, do a single hop addition, whatever noble hop you want to use, and ferment it out and ferment all these at the same temperature. And then the next time do a Planet Malt, and same recipe, same temperature. and then do a Maris Otter and just taste the difference and see if you can tell a difference. If you can't, I may be full of crap, but
it's not mutually exclusive, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like we try to say all the time, if I'm doing it a certain way and I'm successful with it, that's the way I do it. But if you do it another way, just like we had some malt that we could use, and it wasn't something that I was going to use for a specific Pilsner recipe, but it was there. I didn't want it to go bad, and we'd had it a while. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to just try it, and I did, and it worked.
It worked real well.
Yeah. So it's all about what you're willing to try, and we're blessed to be able to experiment a little bit because we do have malt on hand, thanks to Muntins, and we have hops, thanks to Hops Direct, and more importantly, we've got the best yeast in the world.
Thanks to Imperial.
Has been awesome. And, Owen is a cool dude. And I can pick up the phone and say, man, can you send me a batch of yeast? I'm going to do 20 gallons of yeah.
Yeah, and it's in 2 days. In 2 days, we got it. Yeah.
In 2 days. I mean, he wouldn't think twice about it. I mean, he's a cool dude.
Super cool dude. Your experiment, sorry to interrupt you, but it reminded me of, and I can't believe we've never done it. We could film it at some point or just do it to do it. But it's like whenever one time you had suggested to a listener about testing hops, hey, go get a Budweiser or something neutral, and then steep whatever hops you're trying to see for a result of the aroma, what you would get from it. And it's like, oh, that's brilliant. That's an easy way to be able to test hops.
That was Clay. Clay did.
Oh, that was Clay's. Okay, yeah. Well, the thought though of, like you said, doing a smash beer. And if you don't want to do 5 gallons, Frank, you could scale it down, but I know, because they're all going to turn out good. They'll all be drinkable. They'll all be extreme. Exactly. Yeah, you're right. So doing 5-gallon batches of a base of Maris Otter with a 1 ounce addition at 60 of, just pick middle fruit. Just do that. And then do it with a Pilsner malt, and then do it with a 2-row or that Planet malt from Muntins, and then boom. Now you know what to expect because you keep all the factors the same. You're going to mash the same. You're going to boil for the same amount with the same.
That's very important. Make sure that your procedure is followed to the letter on each batch, because you want to base and make that. Let's say if you're trying to compare Pilsner malt with Planet malt, which other people would, like I said earlier, I would consider that an ale malt. You wouldn't want to mash one in the beta and then turn right around and mash the Planet malt in the alpha, and then you're like, well, there's a world of difference. Well, because you're building 2 different houses, and that makes all the difference in the world.
Would you say 150 is the safe for the experiment, or would you go a little higher, a little lower?
If you look at if you ever go on to Google and just look up mashing profiles or temp profiles, you'll see 2 sine waves, and where they pretty much meet in the middle, alpha being here, beta being here, that's going to be about 150 degrees. So when I first started brewing all grain, that was what I mashed at all the time before I started breaking it up. If I'm on a real dry Pilsner, I just mash it 148, between 145 and 148. And for the whole time. And here lately, I've been following Todd's book and not doing a mash out. And the purpose of mash out is to stop the sugar conversion or the starch conversion. But the problem with doing a mash out is sometimes it can, especially if the malt is not completely mashed out. In other words, there's just enough starch to convert into sugars. That length of time that it takes to get from 145 to 169 degrees, because I'm not running multiple burners on our Brautag, so it takes a while to ramp up to that temperature. The problem you get is you get into that alpha range for far too long, and you can add a little bit of body and sweetness to a beer that you don't want. So you got to think about the commercial brewers. They have lots of power, so they can ramp temperatures up fairly quickly where that's not an issue. So if I'm going to do a real dry Pilsner, I just go from my 145 to 148, straight in, and I will heat up my HLT to 175 degrees because there's an offset that you need to think about. And then now this is Todd's method, not me. I incorporated it because it works.
Yeah.
And then I'll do my sparge out of my mash tun, and I'll get most of it out and into the boil kettle. And then I'll come back in and I will dump on you can go, there's calculators online. So if I'm 145, then there's a temperature change. Let's say it's 100. I want to shoot for 170 degrees because that's the temperature that seems to work best to rinse the sugars without any of the other stuff that you don't want. And so 170 degrees works good for rinsing the sugars, but you don't get any tannins out of the hulls. So once again, the whole thing in the mash tun into the boil kettle, and then I'll take, and my HLT's heated up to, I do 175. You probably get away from 170, and then I'll fill the mash tun all the way to the top, and then I'll continue my sparge. Keep the sparge nice and slow. Your target is 45 minutes to fill your boil kettle, and that seems to work for me.
Do you Vorloff anymore? In the early days you did, and I've never asked you, which we won't have to go deep into that, but do you?
The reason why I Vorloff is this. When I had Big Bertha, we were basically gravity flowing into, you could call it a batch sparge, because we had this big cooler, and the reason why you Vorloff is you want to run it until it's clear. Well, the cool thing about a Brautag or any 3-vessel Herm system, it's always circulating. So you've already got a grain bed established. Gotcha. Everything's packed out and filtered. So by the time I get ready to go in to do my sparge, it's been circulating for 60 minutes. So it's already established a filtering grain bed, and I don't have any issues with particulates in the boil kettle because it's already been done for 60 minutes. It's been circulating through it's created its own filter. When we were doing the Big Bertha, I would have to run it about at least 2 quarts of wort before, because we weren't circulating. It was just sitting there suspended in the mash tun in a cooler, basically. So those first runnings were they had lots of hulls and husks and particulates from the mash. And I would pour it till it gets clear and carefully pour it back over the grain bed and then try it again. And once it was running clear, well, then I would start my sparge and go into the boil kettle.
Oh, what a hassle. Oh my gosh.
Well, I'm a mechanical guy.
Yeah,
so the more stuff to do during the brew, I'm happy.
Oh, for sure.
I feel like I'm doing something. I'm making a better beer if I've got more stuff to do. Sorry,
dude. Oh no, you're good. I recorded last night with the head brewer and the owner at a local brewery, and that episode's going NetSuite. But the whole time I was sitting there, I was like, oh, James should have come up for this. Like, you'd have loved this guy. Total engineer minded. Literally, that's the career he abandoned in his 20s because he got bit by the homebrewing bug and then became a pro brewer and then now has his own brewery. But the whole time the things he was talking about and how he MacGyvered his early systems. Like when I'd ask him on, like, he was like, yeah, and then I moved into a 3-vessel Herms. Like, oh, like, who'd you go with? He goes, no, man, I made a 3-vessel Herms. Like I almost offended him. Like I made a control panel and then I got a couple of kegels and the way he was talking, I was like, I should have brought James. Like I know it's a 3.5 hour drive, no big deal, but come next time so that could geek out over this beer stuff.
No, definitely.
But anyways, Frank, this is one too where I'd love to solicit people. If you're watching at youtube.com/homebrew happy hour, leave your feedback in the comments below. It helps the algorithm. More importantly, it helps the show, and we love our community. And if you could, while you're there, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff. It really does help with the algorithm. We're trying to do more. We just put a video out of Todd pouring from 4 different flow control faucets. 3 of them are from Sam Becker, and then the NukaTap, the very popular NukaTap, and the very capable NukaTap. But he did a very short video just showing the difference between what we call true flow control versus standard flow control. So we have a lot of content there at youtube.com/homebrew happy hour. If you're an audio only listener, which again, I can't stress enough, is like 99.95% of y'all. It is wild. Even though we're approaching 7,000 subscribers. So we're getting there. Even though like our buddy Trent, I think he's at like 90,000 maybe by now, and Brewlosophy is probably at 19 million. I don't know where those guys are at. They're good dudes. I'm messing around at our self-deprecating expense. But moving on, we have one final question. Another email. It's our buddy Liam, and he wrote, I've been experiencing issues with foaming and pouring speed when serving my beer using my newly bought Danby Kegerator. It's 2 taps, a tower, and it came with normal faucets from the manufacturer. I was hoping it would come ready to use, but it's foaming more than I would like out of both taps. I keep it at 36 degrees. My beer line is a little under 5 feet per line, I think it is 3/16 line because that seems to be the norm, but the hose does not have anything printed on it, and the listing on Home Depot's website also doesn't say. How would you deal with this? Thank you for your help. I had contacted him to let him know we were giving him a gift card and this and that, and I helped to look it up. I was like, oh, the owner's manual will say it. No, it doesn't. The product manual doesn't say it. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah. This is James's work of content.
There's people on Amazon selling draft kits like for kegerators, kind of like what we do here at Keg Connection. This guy came in and he said it's terrible, and he had 3/8 ID line.
No, shut up.
Yeah.
Well, hey,
that's the first time. I've never seen that before.
Hey, slap an inline flow control on that, and
yeah. Now we just changed the line out.
Yeah.
You know, foaming is very frustrating because there's lots of variables that can cause that, and it's usually never just one thing. It's a combination of a bunch of little. So the 2 biggest ones are temperature and restriction. So restriction is the amount that the hose slows the flow down while it's traveling to the faucet head. And typically, if you've got 5 foot, and this is very important, 3/16 hose, you need to double check that. That's the reason why I said what I said earlier. Is you literally need to measure it and make sure that it's 3/16, because if it's anything bigger than that and it's less than 5, I'm guessing less than 5 feet, there's not enough there to keep it from foaming. So it's all about balance. So what do we mean by balance? We want to match what's coming out of the keg to what's hitting the back of the faucet. So as long as you maintain that equal pressure from the keg to the faucet, the CO2 in the beer will stay suspended in the liquid. Anytime and it can vary a little bit, but anytime there's a huge variance, temperature or restriction, that CO2 just wants to get out of that beer. And that's what you see with foam. If it was water, it would just taste flat. But because beer has protein in it, it takes that protein with it and it turns it into whipped cream. So that's why a foaming issue, and Todd he's the foam guy, not me, but I did go to the draft school. I would say make sure that if that kegerator has a tube to put into the tower to keep the tower cold, you need to put it in there. Sometimes I'm the world's worst. I don't read the instructions. I just throw it together because, by God, I know what I'm doing. But if it's in there and he was like, I don't know what this hose is for, and throws it away, well, that's to keep the tower cool. So if the tower's not cool, then that beer's hitting the heat sink and it's causing it to break out. Now, it won't do it all the time. The way you can tell if it's a temperature issue and you know that the temperature, and I'm talking about put a thermometer in there, and don't go by what the kegerator says, but put a physical calibrated thermometer in there and see what the temperature inside is. And then coincidentally, also draft some beer in a glass and put it in put a thermometer and make sure that beer is where it needs to be. Theoretically, if you're at 36 degrees and you draft a beer, now granted it'll be foamy, but you should still run it enough to where you can run temp on it and make sure that that's what it is. If it's not, then the tower's heating it up. Now, it will not do that for very long because over time, that cold beer flowing through the line and hitting the faucet is going to start to cool everything down. So if it foams the first time and then the foaming seems to go away, like if you've got a bunch of buddies in a line behind you and you're drafting pint glasses and the guy on the very last of the line gets a perfectly poured glass, well, then you know it's a temperature issue. It's a dispensing temperature issue. Another thing is, if let's say it is 3/16 hose, and you said it's a little under 5 feet, and you actually measure it and it's 3.5. Well, you don't have enough resistance inside that hose to slow the beer down and keep pressure stable. But the biggest thing is always temperature. And another variable, if it's homebrew beer, make sure you're not over carbonating that. And if it's over carbonated, there's not a whole lot you can do.
For the sake of the poor, for the sake of the poor, purge that keg and then just cry a little as your first, next couple pints or foam. But
and there's carbonation testers on Amazon that you can pull if you think that's what it is. What I do is I'll do like 30 psi for 3 minutes back when I was carbonating, and it would be under carbonated, but I would let it. Once you plug it up to your system, get it on 11 to 12 PSI, 30, I do 38 degrees, but 36 is fine too. And it will naturally get where it needs to be, 2.5 volumes in just a few days. So I'm willing to undercarbonate it just so that I know that it'll get to where it needs to be by just what's called the set and forget method.
Yep.
So I know it's going to get there in a few days and it'll be just fine. So I don't worry about, I'm not nitpicky on a bunch of stuff. But I don't want to overcarbonate because it's a worse thing.
Oh, it's the worst.
Just pouring foam.
Yeah. And I will say this, if I'm with you, or I think it's the temperature, because a tower situation, that's almost always what it is. People don't realize it could be 36 in your fridge and it's 49 to 52 up in that tower, and that's enough to make it break out. And like you said, by the third pour and it's perfect, yep, ding, 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 there's your troubleshooting. You got to figure out.
Yeah, it's temperature.
If he measures it, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, and that's why when we go out and troubleshoot a foaming issue out in the field, and especially with, we're starting to do a lot more field installations. The first thing we do is we pour a pint glass and measure and run the temperature of the beer in the pint glass. And then if it's not where it needs to be, then they run another glass and see if it improved. Well, if it improved, well, then we know that a lot of the systems we do is what's called a long draw. So it's pumping through a trunk line, and the trunk line's got glycol chiller or cold, basically food grade antifreeze running through the center of a cluster of tubes, and it keeps everything cold, the same temperature from the walk-in all the way to the tap. And, if we see a foaming issue and it tends to clear up in a few glasses, then we look at it could be something as simple as our glycol chiller is low on coolant or the temperature's too high. But temperature and pressure, and I say pressure, you don't want to be at 17 PSI on 100% CO2.
No.
A long draw system is going to use a blend, a 70-30 blend. But, the hose diameter is pretty important too. And if he measures it and let's say hypothetically, it's even 5/16, the good thing is, dude, that's a cheap fix to replace to replace that line of tubing with 3/16. I mean, I would love to be salesman Josh here and go, what you need is a flow control faucet or an inline flow control. But the reality is, just get yourself 5.5 feet of 3/16 line and some clamps, and then swap it out. Boom, 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 boom. Again, I sincerely doubt the tubing in his case is the issue. But now that you said that you knew a guy who got 3/8, now I'm wondering why, because Danby, don't know you guys. I'm not trying to be disparaging. I imagine it's just a all-in-one thing from China that Home Depot signed. They're buying in bulk, they're getting them cheap, and they're selling them relatively cheap. And so, you got to remember those people that are ordering that stuff, and procurement people from Home Depot are generally not draft nerds like we are. So they have no clue. They're just going by what the manufacturers tell them.
Exactly. So, and it is a bummer, Liam. You could always tell Danby, hey, you should include this info or send hose that has it printed. Like I was telling him when I talked to him, I've in my anecdotal experience, which we've only bought tubing from maybe 4 total different manufacturers, but nobody has ever neglected to print on the outside what the inner diameter of that tubing was. You know what I mean? Like I went through all the tubing, and the only ones I could find were maybe some of the high temperature hose like that I'm using on the floating dip tube. Those might be the only ones, but actual like standard liquid line and standard gas tubing, Man, I can't find any that don't have it printed on it. But yes, you can measure it. And if that is the case, Liam, oh my God, it's a 3/8. It's 3/8 as well. Ah, the curse of the 3/8. Okay, buy yourself. I don't even know what 3/16 on kegconnection.com is going for right now, but it's cheap. And if you have,
I'll give you an example of what 3/16. Okay, so 0.1875. So 1/8.
What? You got is that a caliper or what? Whoa, yeah. Man, you are mechanical.
Yeah. So, if you can see, that's what the idea of the hose should be.
Yes.
It's little bitty.
I know. I like what you're doing because this is now getting audio listeners to go to youtube.com/homebrew.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, I hardly ever listen to it. It's always YouTube. But,
you're one of the dozens of listeners or watchers.
If you convert 3/16 of an inch to thousandths, it's 0.1875. So 187.5 thousandths of an inch. And that's that much right there.
Itty bitty.
So it's not a whole lot.
It's not a whole lot. No.
So
but like
anything up bigger than that, you're not gonna have enough restriction to balance that out, and especially if it's way under 5 feet. Everything is like, I caught a fish this big, and you measure it, and it's that big.
That's my whole.
It's the same thing. Guys are really bad about that.
Hey! Listen, my wife only has trick rulers in this house, pal. I found them on Amazon. She's like, "Oh my God, that's huge!" Yeah. Anyway, I'm totally digressing. But anyways, Liam. This is another one too, guys, where if you're watching this, please leave feedback in the comments below at youtube.com/Homebrew Happy Hour or call it in to 325-305-6107. Get yourself a gift card to kegconnection.com like everybody on today's episode got because they sent in questions that we used. That will wrap up this week. Mr. Carlson, I sincerely appreciate your time, and I'll catch you next week, brother.
All right. Have a good week.
You too. And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, like I said, call it in to 325-305-6107. Get yourself that gift card to kegconnection.com. Oh no, wrong audio. How about this? Thank you to our show sponsors, like Muntons Malt Premium Grains for a better brew day. If you aren't already brewing with Muntons, give them a try by joining the Trub Club at a recipe receiving level. For the best hops available online, give our friends at hopsdirect.com a visit and pick up what you need for your next brew day. Also, get a pack of Imperial yeast along with premium recipes from us when you join the Trub Club. Go to patreon.com/Homebrew Happy Hour and come brew with us. On behalf of the absent Todd Burns, the handsome James Carlson, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thanks for listening.